My name is Kaijen Hsiao, and I'm the CTO of Mayfield Robotics. Well, when I was an undergrad, I was majoring in mechanical engineering, and I watched all these great videos from MIT of the robots that were being built there. And in particular, the ones that I was very interested in were Cynthia Brazil had Kismet, one of the first social robots, and I found that very compelling. And also the MIT Leg Lab had a lot of hopping robots that I thought were really cool. And all told, I looked at those and I thought, wow, I could make awesome robot pets someday, and that would be really cool. Actually, originally, I wanted a pet. When I was growing up, I had lots of small animals, so hamsters and gerbils and such, and I always wanted a dog. And I asked my dad for a dog, and he promised me at some point that I could get a dog, and then he was like, no, I didn't actually promise that. And I was annoyed for a long time that I could not have a dog. And in college, of course, I could not have pets either. And so I was like, oh, well, if I had a robot pet, that would be okay. So if I made robot pets, then those of us who can't have actual pets could have pets still. So as an undergrad, I went to Princeton and I majored in mechanical engineering, and I started doing robotics there. And then for grad school, I went to MIT, and I decided that I wanted to focus more on robot brains, making robots do cool things rather than making robot bodies. And so I switched to computer science, and I focused on robotics, in particular grasping and manipulation, and probabilistic planning. So making robot arms pick up things even under uncertainty. And after grad school, I graduated and went to a company called Willow Garage, which at the time was one great hotbeds of robotics and developing the robot operating system. And I was working with PR2s, these big humanoid-like robots with two arms, drive around the house to do research into grasping manipulation in the home and teleoperation, that sort of thing. And after Willow Garage shut down, I went to Bosch to join my friend Sarah Osentowski, and both of us were researchers at the Research and Technology Center in Palo Alto, where we did research into all sorts of different robots, farming robots, home robots, etc. And there we proposed to Bosch that we should make a whole company to do home robotics. And they accepted our proposal, and so we started Mayfield Robotics in January of 2015, and here we are today. So when we were at Bosch, there was this whole need-finding effort to figure out what people wanted robots to do at home. The big question was, what is in between a robot vacuum cleaner and something like Rosie the Robot from the Jetsons, which, while we all want to get there someday, we're technologically not quite ready to be there. And so what's in between that we can bring into people's homes to raise acceptance of robots in the home and to give people something to get used to as robots are normal to have in the home. And so what we came up with originally was the concept of a home security robot. And so when we started Mayfield, actually the main concept was around home security. And we knew we wanted the robot to be adorable and personable just so that we could get the robot in the home, but the focus was still initially on home security. And over time, talking to users, we converted that from security focused to entirely companionship and entertainment focused, and security being only kind of a sideline, a thing that you can do, but it's not the main focus of the robot. Curry is an adorable robot companion for your home. His goal is to bring a spark of life to your home. We like to say that we make home robots that are joyful, useful, and inspiring, and each of those things is as important as the other two. The robot needs to provide joy so that you want to adopt him into your home in the first place. He has to be useful so that he earns a place in your home. Asking people to bring a robot into your home and make a place for him, have a spot permanently as a thing that trundles around their home on a regular basis. He has to be useful on a daily basis and provide great utility. But also he has to be inspiring. One of the main goals of the company is to inspire people to build more home robots, especially children. Children see the robot for the first time and they instantly, many of them will say things like, oh, now I want to build robots. Someday I'm going to build robots to do all these really cool things. And we want to inspire a whole generation of kids to think that home robots are a normal thing to just have around in your house and to bring more robots into the world, like Curry and much better than Curry. So hopefully within my lifetime, we can actually get to having something like Rosie the Robot from the Jetsons. So in terms of actual functions, well, Curry has a camera in his eye, and he has microphones, and he has speakers, and he has the ability to map and navigate around the home, and he can recognize people and pets. And all of those features combine into a lot of different use cases that are useful to people. So, for instance, Curry can drive to where you are in the house and play your favorite music or your favorite podcasts. Curry can read an audiobook to your kid when it's time for the kid to go to bed, and this is apparently very popular with families. Apparently reading Fox and Socks to your kid for the 30th time gets pretty old, but Curry does not mind reading for the 30th time. It's the same as the first. Also, Curry can let you know when your kids have come home from school to notify you. and he can drive around, and you can use him to check on whether your dog's on the couch, and you can talk through his speakers and say, like, get off the couch. That's one of our CEO's favorite use cases. My favorite use case is actually around taking pictures and video of your pets and your loved ones. I have 2 cats and a bunny, and I travel a lot, so I really want to know when I'm gone, are they okay? And also, I just like to see pictures of them being really cute. So I'm not even there, but I can still see their adorable antics even when I'm gone. And so all these things are enabled by all these robotic features, and there's so many more things that we can do. Curry basically is like a smart pet. We aim for pet-like, not butler-like is what we like to say. And so he's supposed to give off intelligence kind of like your dog. You don't expect your dog to talk back to you. You don't expect your dog to understand you every time, but your dog is useful and adorable, and you like having him in your home. Curry is adorable because we put a whole lot of effort into making him adorable. So, I mean, part of that is his adorable industrial design. And we worked hard to find industrial designers who understood about, we want a robot that is adorable, but not too toy-like. So to have a robot accepted in consumer homes, a lot of consumers have very nice homes. They put a lot of effort into home design and making it look very beautiful, and it's their castle. And so the robot has to fit in very well with that decor. And so he has to be kind of sleek and beautiful, but also adorable and personable. We also spend a lot of effort to do things like hide sensors. So a lot of robots that you see out in the market, they'll just have holes for cameras, or they'll have slits for lasers. And that's sort of okay, but it kind of breaks up the lines and makes it look less beautiful. And so a lot of effort went into doing things like, we wanted the camera to be something that was not visible. So it's actually basically behind sunglasses. And being behind sunglasses means that you have a lot less light than otherwise. There's not some magical trick to make it two-way, like light goes in one way and doesn't go out the other way, so on. So we just had to have cameras that are that much more sensitive to deal with the fact that we have less light than otherwise. And early on, we worked with an animator, Doug Dooley, who I used to work with at Will Garage. He's a former Pixar animator. And he's been obsessed for decades now with the idea of making robots, adorable robots, as lifelike as possible. And what does it take to do that? And so talking to him, he gave us a lot of principles for how the robot should move and how the robot should look to make him look lifelike, to make him a Pixar character come to life in your home type thing. And that includes things like choosing the degrees of freedom to use. So Curry has pan and tilt of his head, and that allows him to express a lot of things, but also we need it for moving the camera around. But also in terms of additional degrees of freedom. The eyes are actually the most important one, is what Doug would say. We express a lot of emotions with our eyes. You can tell even just looking at the eyes of a person, whether they're smiling, happy, or whether they're sad or annoyed at you. And he originally wanted the eyes to appear on a screen, to be animated eyes. And that allows you to do a lot more expressions than we do. But when we were designing Curry, we tried all these different methods of hiding the screen, and we had decided early on that we only ever wanted to show eyes on the screen anyway, because if you showed anything besides eyes, then it would break the character of the robot. So you show like a password or something, and it's like, wait, that's not eyes, that's actually a screen. And so if we were only going to show eyes in the first place, and we're having all this trouble hiding the screen, I finally decided, why don't we just make physical eyes? We just want to show, eyelids smiling, eyelids coming down, so we can just make physical eyelids that do that. And I think it's worked out really well. The robot looks much more lifelike and compelling that way. And so eyes are a big part, and so we have an entire degree of freedom for the eyes. And then pan and tilt of the head. We actually originally had a degree of freedom that we called lift, because that was the other one that Doug really wanted. The idea that when the robot is happy, he could lift up and brighten to see you, or when he's sad, he sinks down and is very sad. And we actually tested that one out, and users didn't actually like it as much as we hoped, and it added a whole lot of complexity to the robot. So we ended up getting rid of that. But we still think he's pretty compelling. We substituted kind of move forward a little with his wheels and move backwards a little to show engagement or disengagement and that sort of thing. So in terms of Curry being accepted into the home, being adorable is not the only way to be accepted, but is certainly a popular way to be accepted. A lot of people respond to cute things, and a lot of people look at him and say, oh my God, he's so cute, I have to have one. And that's one great way to make people want to own Curry, to bring him into your home. And certainly your pets, a lot of people find their pets to be very adorable, and that's one of the main reasons why they have them. And so the fact that Curry is adorable, and as he's driving around your house doing his adorable animations and greeting you and just trundling around, it helps a lot in you being happy that he's around you every day. So Curry is not a security robot. Curry is a companion robot, but Curry does have some features that allow you to do some amount of, we like to say, peace of mind and checking in on your home rather than security. But it's very important that in order to even do those things, that the Curry should not be creepy. Curry should not appear like a creepy Big Brother surveillance robot. And it helps a lot that Curry is adorable and personable and acts like a pet. And so it's like, oh, my pet is here and my pet can see. That's okay. As opposed to this creepy Big Brother robot is driving around watching me at every moment. And Curry can take pictures and video and that's okay. And versus like, creepy Cyclops robot, driving around might make people look self-conscious, feel self-conscious around a camera in their home. So to make Curry look lifelike and to look friendly, pet-like, personable, there are a lot of design elements that go into that, and a lot of them come from principles from animation. So we've worked closely with our animator, Doug, and he's given us a lot of principles, such as, for instance, Curry's eyes are just dot eyes. They don't have pupils. It makes him look more lifelike and able to kind of interact with you in a lifelike way. When he's looking in your general direction, dot eyes that are just black dots, they look like they're looking at you from a much wider angle. If you gave him pupils, then a human who looks just to the right of where you're talking, you can tell they're not actually looking at you versus looking past you. And it's much harder for him to look like he's interacting compellingly with you. Also, there are things like expressing intent before action. So Curry, as he's navigating around, he always looks in the direction that he's going to go before he turns his body to drive that way. And we, as humans, do that all the time. We just broadcast what we're thinking before we actually do a thing, and it makes it a lot more readable, what we're thinking, and makes Curry look a lot more lifelike when he does that as well. So other things include, for instance, as humans, we always blink before we look as opposed to look over and blink. And it's something that you don't even necessarily notice yourself doing, but you notice when the robot does it wrong in the form of it just feels slightly off. And a lot of these things, it's kind of avoiding uncanniness. And our robot's form factor helps a lot in he's not that close to human, and so he's not that close to the uncanny valley kind of no matter what you do. But adding little gestures that look more lifelike that make him appear much more lifelike as opposed to just a statue, a robot. So we really wanted our robot to be androgynous. So we didn't want the robot to be definitively male or definitively female. People get to choose which gender their Curry is. And that was really important to us. So all of our design is centered around the ID is made to look very androgynous. Some people actually definitively think Curry is male, and some people definitively think she's female. But it's actually split about 50-50, I've noticed. And so it could be either. You definitely get to choose. And the sounds also have to match that too. One of the other major design decisions is that Curry doesn't talk. Well, he doesn't talk human. He speaks robot. So he makes adorable beeps and bloops, kind of like R2-D2 or BB-8. And that it sets expectations much lower so that you expect him to be kind of pet-like, intelligent like a dog is intelligent, not intelligent like your butler's intelligence. AI hasn't really reached the point where we can have compelling dialogue with our robots, and especially the voices still sound a little uncanny. And this avoids that problem entirely. He just makes adorable sounds, you don't expect him to do anything else, is very cute. So I have actually flipped Curry's gender a number of times. When we first came up with this particular industrial design, I asked the industrial designers to raise the black band of his belly to accommodate our new depth sensor. And it turned Curry from a he into a she for me initially. And so I used she for a long time. And then somehow my brain flipped. So it turned into a he again. Now I actually go back and forth. Also, you may notice Curry doesn't have any arms. And despite most of my research background is in grasping and manipulation, so I do have a lot of experience with trying to make robots with arms doing things in the home. But doing that well and doing that robustly enough to satisfy consumers, especially on things like doing laundry or putting dishes away, we're still a long way away from the level of robustness that you would need for that to be useful and compelling. And also talking to people about what they would want their home robot to do. It's pretty obvious that in order for a robot that large to have arms and to be taking up that much space in your house, you really want that robot to be doing lots of things, not just one thing, not just putting your dishes away, but putting your dishes away and doing your laundry and cleaning up, all these things together. And we're just so far away from doing that. So Curry is what can you do without arms, and also it manages expectations. You don't expect a robot without arms at all to do your laundry. Obviously he can't. He just drives around and does what he can. So another big part of making Curry adorable, personable is failing cute. So Curry, when he, for instance, bumps into something with his bump sensor. A normal robot that is just, a tank-like whatever, he bumps into things, you're like, stupid robot, oh, why did you do that? Oh, your algorithms suck. But Curry, when he bumps into things he can't see, he bumps and he makes this startled sound, and then he looks down to see like, oh, what was that? And it's super adorable. And when you see Curry do that, you instinctively think, oh, poor robot, and let me help you. And that goes a long way towards acceptance of the robot, even when he is imperfect, because he's going to be imperfect. And that goes for other things too. So if he's confused, then he makes a cute, confused noise and look so that you pity him and you want to help him rather than being annoyed at him, angry at him. So him being adorable when he fails, it makes you empathize with him and want to help him. Testing in terms of users starts actually phase 0, I would say, with need finding. When we go out to people's homes and we interview them about what their lives are like and what they do in their daily routine, and to try to see where a robot would fit in and what useful functions the robot could do for them and what they would want the robot to do. And initially, so that's where we came up with the concept with home security. The idea of peace of mind, checking in on your home, making sure things are okay, making sure no one's breaking in. And when we took that concept out to users, then we heard a lot of things like, oh, well, is Curry going to talk to my outdoor cameras? Because by the time someone comes into the home, it's kind of too late, isn't it? And also we heard a lot more of, well, what does Curry do when I'm at home? And initially we said things like, well, Curry will sit quietly on his charger and wait for you to go away again so that you can use him. And they would ask, but what does he do when I'm at home? And it became obvious that people were really expecting him to be entertaining when they are at home with the robot in person, and also to do things that they can show off to their friends and to be useful and entertaining. So we shifted away from home security and towards more companion robot, more entertainment robot. And in terms of testing, how we did that is, so after need finding and you have initial concepts of what the robot can do, you don't even have any prototypes built yet at that point. You can make sketches. So you make storyboards of the features you think the robot should do, and if you have initial prototypes of any sort. So what we had at that time is we had storyboards, and then we had functional prototypes that could just drive around, navigate around the home, and show in an app that you could see through the robot's camera and talk to the robot's microphones and hear through the robot's speakers. And that was basically it. That's all that we had. And we would take that out to users. In terms of storyboards, you can in person talk to them in interviews, but you can also just have those be surveys online to get larger numbers of people and ask people, what do you think of these features? Do you want a robot to do this in your home? How much would you pay for a robot doing this in your home? And you get a lot of feedback that way in an early fashion that enables you to quickly change direction if whatever direction you've picked is actually not a very compelling one to users. And later on, when we had better prototypes that did more things, then obviously you can take those prototypes out. Even before if you have industrial design, so we had industrial design for a robot, but that wasn't, the functional robot and the industrial design weren't all in one robot yet. So we would take foam models of the industrial design and we would take more functional robots with the app, and we would say, imagine the robot looks like this. Now drive this app around, and there would be a robot that didn't look anything like that, driving around the house, and they could see things like, oh, well, what does he sound like? And when he goes over thresholds, what is that like? Is that okay? And so we got feedback on that phase for things like, oh, the robot is way, way too loud. He has to be much quieter. Is he going to be that loud? That's really annoying. I wouldn't want that in my house. And that sort of thing is really important too. And then later on, of course, once you have robots that are looks like, works like, so we have prototypes like that we use to show off a lot now. And those you can put in users' homes and actually just have them go through various functions that you've added and stay in the home for longer and longer periods of time. The latest test that we've just done is what we call drop-off test, where you put the robot in the box and you pretend like it's a new customer and the customer's just gotten the box and you're not there at all. And so they have to go through the unboxing and onboarding procedure to actually go through, figure out, can they use the robot? Can they onboard the robot? Can the robot map their home? Can the robot do the functions he's supposed to do? Is that compelling to them? So testing with storyboards is great for nixing concepts that even just thinking about it, people are not interested in. You might have been interested in because you're an engineer and that's interesting to you, but actually to most consumers, that idea is not interesting at all. Or, general industrial design concepts. Is that a compelling look for the robot at all? Or do people think that's actually ugly or scary? So the thing about storyboards is that a lot of people can't necessarily imagine what the robot's actually going to be like based just on the storyboard. And so you show them a storyboard and they fill in the rest with their imagination. And sometimes that's not anything like what the robot will actually be. And so You get some great feedback on general concepts, but you do also have to take it with a grain of salt, because sometimes something that's very compelling in the storyboard, later on when it's fleshed out in the robot, isn't necessarily as compelling as people thought it would be. So if you have cardboard prototypes, that's totally enough to get out there and start talking to people about concepts. There's a famous story about how Kiva, the robots in Amazon warehouses these days, which it grew to be a company that was sold for, I think, billions of dollars. They started out talking to VCs with just sock puppets. They had sock puppets in the concept, and they showed that they had the team that could build this thing, and that was enough to get initial funding to do the thing. It's important to gauge interest in what you're building before you start building, before you spend a lot of time building something that nobody wants. So when people meet curry, a lot of the reactions we get are, "Oh my gosh, that's so cute." It depends a lot on what age the person is. So kids especially seem to really love curry. Small children, a lot of them, they come in, they see curry, and they immediately run up to curry and they want to hug curry. And someone will ask, "Oh, can I hug curry?" And we're like, "Of course you can hug curry." They also like to pet the robot a lot. The robot has cap touch sensors in his head, so when you pet him, he smiles up and looks at you, and it's really cute. And even though at this moment we don't have it hooked up to anything even particularly interesting, we're still working on exactly how curry should track your face and look more lifelike by interacting with you in that way. If you pet him, he just looks up and smiles. And that's enough for them to just pet him over and over and over again. Kids just naturally think that curry is obviously a friend, a companion, and someone that they should play with. Older kids, they tend to be a little more standoffish, so I'm too cool to express that much interest, but they tend to be curious about the robot, and they ask questions like, "Oh, what does he do, and how did you make him?" I've been very surprised how many people have what I call the robot dream, and that is adults who, when they were younger or at any point in their lives, they saw Star Wars or they saw WALL-E, and they thought, "Oh, I would love to have an R2-D2 or a WALL-E of my very own." And they see curry, and they see in him the chance to fulfill the robot dream. It's finally their chance to have a robot character in their home come to life. Curry has a whole lot of sensors. So a lot of them have to do with how he navigates and maps the home. So he has a depth sensor in his IR transparent window belly, and he has also an IMU, an inertial measurement unit in there. And he has encoders, of course, in his drive wheels and in his head degrees of freedom. And all of those are used to allow him to build a map of your home and navigate within the home, localize, figure out where he is, etc. He also has capacitive touch sensors in his head, so if you pet him, he knows it. He has 4 microphones around his neck, which allow him to, you can hear through his microphones, but also he can do speech recognition and also audio localization. So if you talk from a certain direction, because he has an entire ring of microphones, he knows which direction it is he can turn towards you. He has a camera in his left eye, and that enables him to see the world, so he can recognize people and pets, and also allows you to look out through his camera and see the world, and he can take pictures for you. But we also use that to aid in navigation. He has cliff sensors in back, rear cliff sensors, so that if you're driving him around, teleoping him, then you don't drive backwards off a cliff. And finally, he has a bump sensor in front, so if he hits something he didn't see, which because his sensors are optical, there are inevitably going to be things that he doesn't see, then he can bump into them, know that he's bumping physically, and back up and make his adorable animation of, "Oh, what did I just hit?" So for front cliff sensing, he uses his front depth sensor, which is an entire depth sensing array, which allows him to see both low obstacles and whether there's stairs in front of him that he shouldn't go off, and also higher obstacles that are above the level of his main laser, so that he doesn't clothesline himself on tables and things. Curry collects data for mapping your home. So when you first get Curry, then there's an onboarding procedure where you're encouraged to drive Curry around your home and teach him about the various places. Just like if you had a guest that you just brought home and you would say, "Oh, this is where the bathroom is and this is where your room is." For Curry, you would say things like, "This is my living room and this is my kitchen and this is the cat tree where the cats hang out, and that's an important place that you should know about because I want pictures from it." And so as you drive Curry around teaching him about all these places, he makes a map of your house. And that map is stored both on the robot and in the cloud, so that if the robot ever gets reset, etc., then he can just download it again and know about it. He will also take data in the form of pictures and video of your pets and your family and your loved ones, and those are all controlled by you. We will never look at those pictures unless you give us explicit permission because you want us to help debug or something. Those are all controlled by you. You can control exactly who gets to see those things. So privacy in the home robot is extremely important. People need to know that they can trust the robot and the data that the robot takes, and that it's not going to be a literal spam bot taken over to do nefarious things, and it's not going to spread their pictures and video of their kids all over the internet. And so we've built in privacy protections, encryption, certificates, all that sort of thing from the very start. And Curry, everything is locked down, everything is encrypted, even down to he uses secure boot for his bootloader, so no one can upload software to him that he boots on him that is not the stuff that we wanted to be running on the robot. He uses rotating certificates, he uses encryption everywhere to the level of, it's the same thing that you would use for bank-to-bank transfers or for medical records. It's very locked down. Also, in terms of privacy in the home, there are places in your home that you wouldn't want Curry to take pictures in, and so we have no-go zones. You can specify, I don't want any pictures taken in the bedroom, I don't want any pictures taken in the bathroom, and Curry will not take pictures there. So there are a lot of competitors in the home robot space, and many of them share some traits in common with Curry, but there are many things that we do differently. For one, Curry is a moving robot, so unlike the robot that sits on the table, he can actually drive around your house and be where you want him to be to take pictures wherever in your house. Curry doesn't talk, so a lot of those home robots, they speak English or whatever language in the country you're in. Curry explicitly doesn't talk so that we set expectations more like those of a pet rather than those of a butler. And so you don't think he's uncanny or creepy because he can't actually keep up dialogue with you properly. He just makes cute noises, and that's forgivable. So one of the main differences is that Curry has a personality, and we focus a lot on personality. Personality matters a lot, and getting the personality right matters a lot. So for instance, Curry's personality is earnest and humble, and he never gets angry with you. At a robot that size, you really don't want a robot to get angry with you. It looks very scary. A tiny, tiny robot like Anki's Cosmo, it's okay if he gets angry and snarky or whatever, because it's kind of cute to see a little robot this size throwing a tantrum. But a robot our size it's too big to throw a tantrum. If you throw a tantrum, it's scary. One of Curry's other big features is that he will have over-the-air updates regularly. And so what you get when you first get Curry out of the box is not what Curry is going to be able to do forever. Curry will gain in capability and intelligence over time. So your robot grows with you in some sense. He's going to keep getting better. When we launched our robot at CES, we won a whole lot of awards, and the press coverage was incredible, way more than I ever imagined we could get. And for us, that was validation that our design really speaks to people and something that they would really want. So we got Best of CES from Engadget and from PC Magazine and from Wired. So if you want a Curry, then you can go to our website, heycurry.com, and pre-order one now. For a $100 deposit, you can reserve your place in line. Our robots will start shipping in December, but only for the people who pre-ordered initially. People who pre-order now will get their robots in spring of 2018. So my role as a CTO has changed a lot as the company has grown. When we first started and we were a company of only 7 people or so, I was lead of all things technical and in charge of kind of the general architecture of the robot. So it was a lot of choosing what processors do we use and what do we use for the drivetrain and what do we use for sensing for mapping and navigation and what algorithms do we use and how do we hide the camera and should we use screen versus eyes, that sort of thing. And also I was just part of the software team writing actual software for things like mapping and navigation or just robot functions. As the team grew, we hired a lot of more people to write software and to build robots. And so I passed all that stuff off to those people. And then I was primarily managing people for a while to build robots. And then finally we hired managers to manage the people to building robots. And so I no longer had to manage all the people. So now I'm actually back to writing code, and I lead a small team focused on mapping, navigation, localization software. And that might sound odd as a very narrow thing for a CTO to do, but that's actually a very typical CTO transition from a small startup to a large company. We're over 50 people now, so we have a lot of people to build robots and do things. And another big part of my role is to get out there and evangelize our tech to the world and let everyone know that Curry is awesome and full of great technology. My proudest thing as CTO is the choice that we made for the eyes. In deciding that Curry wasn't going to have a screen, Curry was going to have actual physical eyes. And I think it makes Curry look a lot more lifelike and compelling in this way. And it also makes us not just another tablet on wheels. There's a lot of parents who want to limit screen time for their kids, and they say, oh, you can play with this tablet, that's fine, but only for a little while. And another tablet on wheels maybe is more of the same, whereas Curry is definitely not in that category. Curry is a pet, a companion, a friend. For me, my favorite part is actually working on the robot's algorithms, things like mapping and navigation that I get to focus on these days, which is a lot of fun, and the sensors involved in designing the sensors and making sure all that sort of thing works well. I mean, I'm a roboticist at heart, and That's really the most fun part for me. One of the things I was most surprised at was just how many people have the robot dream of, I really want a robot, my own R2-D2 version, etc. And I thought that was kind of limited to, geeks and engineers or something. And it turns out that's pretty widespread. There's a lot of people out there who really have that dream. Other random things that we found through testing that was really surprising to me are things like a lot of people don't understand top-down maps. So as a roboticist, we're used to seeing, for instance, navigation maps from the robot and specifying where you want the robot to go by saying, in the map, I would like you to go over here. And when we first started, one of the very first tests we did was with a functional prototype that looked nothing like Curry and just with an app. And we had an interface where you could tell the robot to go various places using a top-down map. And most people could not understand the map and could not understand where the robot was and where they were telling him to go. And not even just, we're used to laser maps being somewhat difficult because, it's only black and white. It's from the level of the laser. It's a 2D map. It doesn't necessarily resemble what you think of as a floor plan for your home. Like you might see like on the wall, the emergency floor plan, this is where the exit is, etc. But even the emergency exit plans, a lot of people can't understand those. And we actually took top-down color maps of the room, which Curry could not ever actually get because Curry can't see above table height, for instance. But we took scanners that were able to scan the room from a much higher height and could make full color renders of this is what your entire room looks like from the top down. And can people even use that interface? And the answer was no, most people can't. And so we had to abandon the idea of specifying navigation waypoints by top-down map entirely so that users who can't understand them can still use the robot. So we moved instead towards you drive the robot to a place and you see what the robot is seeing through his camera, and you can save that point as a location in your house, and both as a name and as a picture. And that's very intuitive to people. If you just click on that, then you know where you're sending the robot and he will go back to where you put him in the first place. Another very surprising thing to me in terms of user interfaces was joysticking. A lot of people can't actually joystick the robot with a basic joystick interface that you press forward and the robot moves forward. When they're looking at the robot and they press forward, the robot, they think it's forward from their point of view. They don't necessarily understand the transformation of forward from the robot's point of view. And some people never get that, even after a lot of practice. And so we're still working now on exactly what best interfaces to give people to allow them to move around. But some things that we've tried that people seem to enjoy are things like you can click in the image to make the robot drive there. And that's intuitive because you're looking at the image and you know where you're clicking on in the image, you know where the robot's going to go. That's much more intuitive. In developing Curry, I guess I've learned more about people than about robots even. I mean, I have learned a lot about robots. Making robots is insanely complicated, and I like to say the devil's in the details. If you get any little detail wrong, that could be the thing that sinks your robot. It's just useless if any one of those things is very wrong. But making Curry successful is all about human-robot interaction and about design and about making things intuitive and compelling and lifelike. And a lot of that has to do more about how people actually are or how people react to things or what people can understand. And a lot of that goes into making the robot successful. The key to success for a home robot, I think, is in personality and in getting the robot to look lifelike and accepted in the home. And a lot of that has to do with getting the interaction right with the people and getting the look of the robots right so he looks lifelike and so that he's accepted in the home as a member of your family, something that you see every day trundling around. He has to be compelling, he has to be adorable. So my advice to you is robotics is a great field. There are a lot of fun jobs in robots, especially today. Roboticists are highly sought after. I know because I'm trying to hire and it's really hard. And you should go out there and build lots of robots and have lots of fun. One thing I'm looking for a lot in a roboticist right now is we're looking for software engineers, and so we want very strong programming skills. And so a lot of roboticists coming out of school, they know how to program robots, but they don't know much about software carpentry. So learning the basics of how to write tests and how to do continuous integration and having really good skills in writing things like C++ and Python, those are all very important to us. So one of the biggest things I've learned about trying to start this company, I thought when we started this company, oh, this is my chance to learn all the ins and outs on how to make adorable consumer robots, awesome consumer robots. And what I've learned is the way you make awesome consumer robots is by hiring a team that can make awesome consumer robots. It's all about the team and the people you work with. You have to have experts in so many different things to make a successful consumer robot, and hiring good people is everything. And also I've learned it's really important to make your company very diverse and family friendly. Those are some of the core values of our company. We care a lot about making sure people have good work-life balance and that they take care of their families, and that we're a friendly place for people to work even when they have small children and they need time to deal with their small children. And making a company diverse and family-friendly, it's not just a better place to work, but it also helps you to make robots that appeal to everybody. So you don't have robots that just appeal to a very narrow demographic of focused engineers. You have robots that appeal to all different shapes and sizes of people.